Growing up as a military child can be a unique and challenging experience. Military children or military brats often have to adapt to new environments, schools, friends, as their parents are deployed and relocated. Moreover, being a military spouse also comes with its own sets of challenges and rewards. Adapting to deployments, relocations, and the demands of military life can be difficult, but it can also offer incredible opportunities for personal and professional growth. And lastly, a mother to someone in the military has its own unique set of demands. Despite the challenges, mothers, spouses, and children play a critical role in supporting their families and serving their countries. And today, our guest is all three. Hi, Angela. Want to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background? And happy Thanksgiving, by the way, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving to you too.
Yeah,
Uh,
happy Thanksgiving.
yeah. My name is Angela Lightfoot. I, as you mentioned, have been all three of those things. Every aspect of a Blue Star family you can possibly think of. I have participated firsthand in that experience. My father and my bonus father were both in the Army. My ex-husband, my son's father, was in the Navy. My current husband, Stephen, was in the Marines. And then my son spent some time in the Air Force as well.
So
Yeah,
you
that's
essentially
quite
had
the
a
resume.
yeah, you had a almost an interaction with every single branch minus the Coast Guard and I guess now the Space Force.
Yeah.
But your grandchild could still go in the Space Force, so you might be able to get them all.
That's true. That's very true.
But isn't your don't you have a nephew that was gonna go Coast Guard or considered it?
I have a nephew, my sister's son. He graduated from the Maritime Academy at A&M in Galveston. He considered it, but now he is working as with a company. I think he does like dispatching boats and stuff like that. He was also considering doing harbor pilot, which those are the pilots that jump on the boat as you're bringing them into the bay or the harbor and actually steer them in because they're familiar with the different geographies of the ocean floor in that particular area.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you almost
That
got
would be
everyone in
cool.
every branch.
Almost.
So let's start off as a child because let's just go chronological.
Yeah.
What was your experience as a child? What do you think? Like, what were the challenges? What did you like and what did you didn't like?
So my dad, we'll start with my dad. I was actually born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Womack Army Air Base. That's where my dad was stationed after he returned from Vietnam. He spent some time in Vietnam. He was in the Army from, I think, 68 to 79, so he spent 10 or 11 years. Um, when he was in Vietnam, he was a quartermaster in Phu Bai. I don't know what that is, but I think that's how you say it. My sister was actually born while he was deployed to Vietnam. So when he came back, we were stationed in Fort Bragg, and that's where I was born. And then from there, I think we were there for maybe about a year. He got deployed or stationed in Germany. So we went to Ludwigsburg, Germany, and and that's outside of Stuttgart. We spent 3 years there. So when we came back to the United States, I was getting close to being school age, kindergarten, and we were stationed in Fort Bliss. My dad got stationed in Fort Bliss, and he got retrained on the Hercules missile in the air defense area of the Army. And we lived there until he got out. So we weren't there for very long before he got out of the military. And then, kind of tried to adjust to civilian life as best as he could. We didn't move around a lot, obviously, because he spent a lot of his military career before I was born.
Right.
At least, a third or a fourth of it before I was born. So, as younger, I didn't really move around a lot. It was when I was older, my parents split and my mom remarried, and my bonus dad was also in the military, in the air defense, working with the Patriot missile system. Although I don't think that's what he started. I think he may have been working on the Hawk missiles, and then as the Patriots became a thing, he moved over to that particular missile system that he worked on. And it was when I was 15 years old that he got orders, um, and we moved back to Germany. So we moved to Ansbach, Germany. He was stationed there. Ansbach, the bases there are called caserns, and Ansbach Kaserne or Karabakh Kaserne was more of a helicopter. They had helicopters there. They were the first caserne there in Germany to have the Apache helicopters, which was a big thing because there was a lot of locals that didn't necessarily want these, assault rifles in the sky coming to their community. So we moved there. The air defense was kind of new to that area as well. It was culture shock, to say the very least, because we lived in El Paso, which is where Fort Bliss is, and that's a border town here in Texas, right? So, you have that in and of itself is just a different culture than maybe other areas of the country, because you have such of the Hispanic influence in that particular area. So going from that particular desert area and then moving all the way across the pond to a foreign country in your teens as a girl, had quite the challenges. I was halfway through my freshman year of high school when we moved.
So did you go to school on a military base in Germany?
Yeah, so I went to, when we moved there, we lived off base. We lived on the economy in a German house. And then I bused to Karabakh, which is where the high school was. Well, it was a high school, middle school and high school together. And then the elementary school was just down the road. So it was 7th grade through 12th grade, and it was an American high school. It was a Department of Defense high school. So we had, people from all that area, and probably I think Krailsheim and Illesheim were the farthest away that we bused kids in from, and there was probably about 30, 45 minutes away. Yeah.
How did you like that? I could imagine it'd be a pretty tight-knit group of kids since you all had the same experiences and lost all your friends when you came there.
Yeah, without a doubt. It was unique in that the friends that you started high school with were not going to be the same friends that you graduated with, because you had the deployments, the ins and the outs. And so your friend group might be large, but when you're going through actual school, I mean, my graduating class had 65 kids in it. So it was a similar experience as to growing up maybe in a small town. But it was a tight-knit group because we were all going through the same experience together.
Do you still keep in contact with any of those kids you graduated with?
For the longest time I didn't, but through the wonders of social media, I've been able to reconnect with a lot of my high school friends. And it's been so much fun just to see where they are now in their lives, and, see what life experiences they've had, how, ours have paralleled maybe, and how close some of them are, and how far away, others are. It's been really, really an amazing experience to be able to reconnect with them.
And then just curious, your bonus dad, during that 3 to 5 year period, did he deploy at all while you were at school?
No, he did
not.
Oh,
well, that's good.
Yeah. And interestingly, when we moved there, it was 1988. I was halfway through my freshman year, and we were supposed to PCS back to the States at the end of 1990. And I had enough credits at the end of that semester to be able to go ahead and graduate high school. So we did that. I graduated and finished school in December of 1990, and then the war started. Desert Storm started.
Yeah. And so you were, what, 17?
Yeah, I was 17. We weren't allowed to leave. No, I was 18. I turned 18 that year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I was born in 72.
I just didn't know if you had graduated a little early.
Well, no, actually, I was graduating a little behind because I loved seventh grade so much that I did it twice.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I actually graduated in the year that I was supposed to graduate, but six months later. Um, so we weren't allowed to leave the country, so they extended David's uh, assignment there until all of that had kind of dissipated, and we had the majority of our community back because when the war started, uh, pretty much all of the units there, because we have a cavalry unit, it was the 80.
82nd?
No, it was the what was the name? I don't know. It was the big headquarters for there for like the cavalry, and then we had the aviation units. So a vast majority of all of those units had been deployed, except for my bonus dads, which he was not real happy about. If you could imagine, he was really wanting to be able to use his skills and his training in real life scenarios, which, I would imagine maybe it's like that for a lot of people, but um, his unit was one that stayed back.
And it is. A lot of people would think that it's a blessing for guys to not have to go to war, but most of them signed up to do it. So it really tears at their ego and their pride when they don't get to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he volunteered probably a few times without telling my mom about it, but when you take everything into perspective, you have to have those people that are over there fighting, there where the conflict is, but at the same time you have to have those that are back home protecting our own interests.
Yeah.
They're either at the base there in Germany or wherever our American citizens are. It's
and taking care of his wife and kids. I mean, that's a big part of what you need to protect as well. A lot of people don't look at it like that, but
in Germany, our forces were pretty vast then too, because that the wall had just come down about the time you guys were there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Berlin
the
Wall
actually came down while we were there, and in our community there was a big piece of it that stood in the center of the town there.
So the Cold War had just ended, pretty much, and then so there's still a lot of American forces there because they had a large amount. So that would have been. Did you get to go to Berlin?
We didn't go to Berlin. No, we did a lot of traveling. I mean, the countries are so jam packed that you could travel for 16 hours and have gone through 4 or 5 different countries. Here in Texas, particularly, you travel for 16 hours and you're barely out of the state.
Yeah.
But we didn't really venture up that because we were in Ansbach, which is in southern Bavaria. So we were in the south part of the country, really close to Austria.
Okay.
And Czechoslovakia. So we were probably about an hour from Czechoslovakia to the east, and then about an hour from Austria to the south.
Did you get to go to Austria at all?
Yeah, we went to Neuschwanstein, which is the Cinderella Castle. I mean, we did a lot of traveling. They have, each little town will have like little festivals, and so you could always travel to these little festivals. And they have what's called Volksmarches, where it's like usually like a 5K, and you walk, and it's usually through the town or through the wooded area, and they'll have like sausage and French fry stands set up along the way and beer stands. So it was an experience that I will never forget in my life, and it's some of the best memories I have. It's just
I'm sure it's beautiful over there.
Yeah, and then after I graduated, and we were there for another 8 months. So I wasn't in school, so I worked, and I was able to travel with my friends, and we spent a week in Spain, and it it was just an amazing experience. It was so much fun.
And then when you turned 18, you went back to Texas?
So when we came back, I had just turned 19, I think, because my birthday's in the summer, so we came back in August. We came back, we hung out in Indiana to see family for a while, and then yeah, David was stationed again at Fort Bliss.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's the roll of the dice, right? You got to go in Germany and then you got stuck back at Fort Bliss.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny, they say that the two worst duty stations of the large bases in the Army are the large post or Fort Bliss and Fort Polk. So,
Yeah, that checks.
or Fort Irwin, right? Fort Irwin's the other bad one. It's in the
Yeah,
desert.
it was.
Apparently, they just renamed Polk.
They renamed Fort Bragg as well. It's which you can try and change history all you want, but it's on my birth certificate, so it's never going away.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate, changing history is one thing too, but it's weird. You grow up and you're hearing all these names and then now I don't even know what it's called nowadays. What is it?
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
No idea.
So, okay. So that's a little bit of your child experience. You had some good and some bad. What about the spouse? You met your first husband. How did that happen?
I did. So, when I was in El Paso, early 20s, going out, hanging out with my friends, going to the club. And that's actually where I met my baby daddy, Alfred. He was actually home on leave. I think it was around Thanksgiving. He was home on leave. He had just finished 2 years in Sasebo, Japan, because he was in the Navy. He was on the USS Bellawood while he was there. So he was home on leave, and we met at the club, hit it off, and stayed in contact. He was so he was home on leave, and he was being stationed in San Diego. So we kept in touch, and eventually got married, and then I moved out there with him. He was stationed on the USS Kitty Hawk, which was one of the oldest aircraft carriers. I think it's decommissioned now, in the Pacific Fleet. So whole different, unique set of, living and circumstances. And it was the first time I had been on my own out of state. I lived on my own there in El Paso. And so he was stationed on the Kitty Hawk, and I moved out there and got a job. And he went on a short deployment. It was only for like maybe a month or so, and it was during that time that I found out I was pregnant. So when he came back, and I went to go pick him up at the pier, and I was able to tell him that we were going to have a baby, which was exciting. So we were there, I think, for 2.5 years or so. Right before Freddie was born, Freddie's my son. His reenlistment came up, and it was kind of unique timing because the Kitty Hawk was about to get underway for a Westpac, which was, if you're not familiar, it's a 6-month tour of the Western Pacific, basically. So he would have been underway for 6 months, visiting all the stops in the West, in the Pacific. And he just decided at that time that it just wasn't, he was going to miss the birth of our son, first Thanksgiving, first Christmas, a lot of firsts. And it just wasn't something that he was willing to do. So he decided to get out, and he did not re-enlist. We spent another year or so. Sorry if you hear my dog in the background.
No worries.
They have the same problem.
He's telling me that Amazon's here. So we spent about another year. Freddie was born, which was another unique experience because I was there by myself, basically. We didn't have any family close by in California. My sister happened to also be pregnant at that time. My son and my nephew are 6 weeks apart. And also, to add more drama to the story, my stepmother was also pregnant at the time.
Oh, that's
So we
fun.
have my little brother was born 6 weeks before my son, and then my nephew was born 6 weeks after my son. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
crazy how that works. So we had Freddie, and we lived there for another 18 months. And then after that, we decided to come back to Texas. And we moved here to the Houston area where my sister was. Because of growing up in the military, it created a situation where I didn't grow up with my cousins. I grew up with my sister, and even that, I only grew up with my sister half the time. Because my parents split, she kind of went back and forth. And then when we moved to Germany when I was 15, she was 18. She was not a full time student. And so she wasn't able to come. I mean, she could have come with us, but she would have had gotten a job, or the military wouldn't have paid for that. So my teen years, I kind of grew up as an only child. And then, when we were younger, it was really just my sister and I. We kind of leaned on each other a lot. I have a lot of cousins, but because we were so far away, everybody else was kind of up in Indiana. And I didn't want that for my son. I missed
right.
that. Now that we're adults, my cousins and I have great relationships, and we're able to learn who we are, and just kind of maybe some of our similarities that we didn't even know existed. Um, and I wanted Freddie to grow up having those close family bonds. It was really important to me, and I missed my sister. I mean, like I said, growing up, it was just her and I, and she's my best friend, even though we fought a lot, just like most siblings do. And being the younger sister, I'm sure I was probably as annoying as hell. um, but she took care of me a lot too. So I just wanted to be close to her. My
Yeah.
dad and my mom also live in this area as well. So we moved here in 97, the late 97, and have been here ever since.
So you spent a portion as a Navy spouse,
Yes.
and then you became
A
a
Marine.
Marine spouse. Now, did you
Well,
meet him after he got out, or
yes. Yeah.
okay?
So Stephen is 10 years older than I am, and he was in the Marines from, hold on, he told me. I can't remember the dates. Oh, 83 to 93.
Okay.
So he was
Um,
in during Desert Storm then.
yeah, Stephen is a combat veteran Marine.
Okay.
Um,
So
he
he went
was,
from a combat veteran Marine to a pastor.
yes, he is now a pastor in the Global Methodist Church group. He pastors two churches, two small little country churches, and it really, really enjoys that. It feels like, that's where he's supposed to be. I think uh, that his faith, well, I don't think, I know, and he will tell you himself, his faith is what has helped heal him from the things that he saw and participated in Desert Storm. Um, there's a lot of things that you see on the news, and it was very well covered because we had all that technology. But there's things that go on that you don't see, and things that happen that, or maybe you're told aren't happening, but actually do happen. And I don't, if that's protection of secrets, or just, I don't know what it is, but um, yeah, he came home with a lot of scars, mostly mental and emotional, and suffers from PTSD as a result. And um,
Yeah. So Angela, you've had a lot of different experiences throughout this, your military career. But on the other side, I think a lot of people don't understand how important spouses and parents and children are to the active duty military. Do you think there's a common stigma that people are misunderstand that part, or what do you think people need to understand about military spouses, military families?
I don't know that it's necessarily a misunderstanding as it is just kind of ignorance to it. And I don't say that in a negative way. Ignorance is, you just don't have that knowledge. Um, it, the military personnel, absolutely 1,000% have signed up for this, but the spouses and the children didn't. They are supporting their loved one. And as much as our military and our heroes, the families back home are the heroes that are not really spoken about. The spouses are, you go from a 2-parent family to a 1-parent family. Military doesn't really pay a whole lot, and it puts a lot of financial burden. Yeah, puts a lot of financial burdens, and not only are you trying to take care of a household and take care of a family, but you're also trying to be supportive and be strong. And sometimes it's just not easy. It's a challenge every day, because the military personnel, soldier, seaman, whatever name you want to, airman, whatever name you want to put on it, they know where they are and how they are and what they're facing. And the military family, the spouses and the kids that are left behind, they don't. And sometimes it's the not knowing that is worse than anything else.
As a kid, you don't have much of a choice. You kind of just have to go along with your parents. But as a spouse, it takes, I think, a special type of person to be a spouse and go through all that. What do you think the most important trait or strength that you think that you have from being a spouse? What do you think that is?
Patience, without a doubt. It's patience. Stephen saw a lot, did a lot in Desert Storm. And as a result of that, he suffers from the memories of that. And even though we weren't married at that time, that he carries that with him. And so it's really important for me to have that patience that, if he maybe snaps at something that really seems kind of silly to me, to think about where that's coming from. When he's having the nightmares, and dealing with reliving those situations in his subconscious, that wakes me up, but he's the sound asleep and then doesn't really even remember those things when he wakes up. But I do, and I lost the sleep over it. That's where the patience comes in as well. It's not anything that he can help. It's not anything that he's doing intentionally. It's part of that. I think part of that healing process is dealing with the things that you can deal with, but then also maybe packing away some of those other things that maybe are just too difficult to deal with. So having I think patience is probably without a doubt the most important thing.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I would say that spouses probably have as much, if not more, mental fatigue too from it all. I mean, at least in our experience, she has to do all the worrying and has all the fear, whereas most of the time I was like, I don't care what happens while I'm over there or this and that. And she was worrying for a year straight. Or you get home and, like I said, you have all the memories, but she's the one that has to deal with the aftermath from it.
Right. Yeah. And that's not even necessarily for people that have been deployed. It happens there, even when they're stateside. There's certain stresses with being in the military that nobody else is going to really feel the impact of. But yeah, it's been And I don't talk about it with him. I don't ask him questions. And my dad is the same way. I mean, my dad spent significant time in Vietnam during a period of time when it was really heavy fighting. And I don't think that anybody that is in the military can go to a deployment and then come back and say that they are not changed. Um,
No,
it's
I don't
going
believe so either.
you can play tough guy, you can deny it, and maybe that's a coping mechanism for some people, but the fact is that doesn't matter if you saw horrible things or didn't. The fact that you were over there and put in that situation is 1,000% going to change you in some way. Maybe it's minor, maybe it's major. And it's really unfortunate that our veterans get treated the way that they get treated.
One of our first guests that we ever had on the podcast was a therapist, and we talked a little bit about the deployment and how good therapy is for some people, but it really is subjective though. Some people are affected by it different, some people aren't. But I think males though, we tend to bottle up our emotions a little bit, and that can come back and bite us in the tail end. It's one of those things that, you don't think about it, and then it builds up, and then it comes out when it's built up, and it's going to explode, and it's kind of bad.
Yeah.
In your opinion, oh, go ahead, Jones.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think finding faith is probably the biggest thing you can do. Like in her husband's case, I mean, not only is God helping you, but choosing to follow that lifestyle. It usually includes getting rid of drinking, smoking, trying not to be angry. There's lots of passages that help you get through things like that. Lots of people in the Bible that had their struggles, and it was a huge part of me dealing with a lot was getting back into church, and it helped a lot to read scripture and pray whenever I had problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but to Jonathan's point, healing is different for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think, and I won't speak for my father, but I think that experience over there maybe destroyed a good part of his faith. Not completely, but I think, in Vietnam War veterans had different things that they had to face when they came back.
Yeah,
which made it even more challenging, I think, for them to get the help that they all needed and deserved, because it wasn't as readily available. They weren't hailed as heroes. And, it was like, I think the attitude, well, you were there, just deal with it. And, that's really unfortunate.
Vietnam veterans are just a different breed. They had a very unique situation. The most underappreciated veterans out there. I know from Jones and I's experience, when we got back from deployment at Fort Polk, the Vietnam veterans actually greeted us there when we came back from deployment. And I guess they did that because they said no one was there to greet us, so we greet every deployment when they come back. And I just thought that was just one really cool bunch of people. I really respect that. That's a special group of people right there.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Amazing. That's amazing.
So how about this? Switching gears a little bit. What do you think is the biggest challenge? Being a child, being a spouse, or being a mother to someone in the military?
Oh boy. Being a military brat was kind of cool. I mean, it led to a lot of fun experiences. Being a military spouse, it has its own unique challenges, but boy, being a military mama, that's tough. And I think had I not had the experiences as a child and a mother, that it would have been much more difficult for me to deal with, because I went into it knowing what to expect. But at the same time, because I knew what to expect, it still was, I knew that future family, future wife, it was going to be challenging. And to think that my baby boy was going to be at some point possibly put in harm's way, that just that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, it's got to be brutal. I can't even imagine my kids joining. I just remember, I mean, I remember doing it to my mom and how mad she was. But so, I mean, I can only imagine how rough that is.
Yeah. And I wasn't really necessarily like, I was glad that he was choosing that path because he was in college and, he went into college right out of high school. And, sometimes people need that chill year. And he didn't take that, which maybe if he did, he would have chosen a different path. But college just wasn't working out for him, which was fine. And so he chose to join the Air Force. Now, knowing what he was going to be doing in the Air Force kind of made me feel a little better because I knew that he wouldn't be, he's not going to be in a plane where somebody can shoot it down. He's not going to be, on a battlefield. He was an intelligence analyst, so he was going to be in a secure location doing whatever it is intelligence analysts do. I don't know. To this day, I don't even know, which is probably good.
So let's talk about holidays though. What are holidays like in a military family when they're away, and then how much more special is it when they come home?
Oh boy. Well, growing up, it was interesting, especially when we were in Germany. Your family becomes your military family, and my bonus dad was an NCO, and so his soldiers became our family. And so we still had big holiday celebrations. It just looked a little different. Instead of cousins and, siblings and aunts and uncles and grandparents, you had, you know, uh, younger soldiers that didn't have families. And my mom and my bonus dad are love to host. And so we always had a house full of soldiers in the house. But when Freddie joined the Air Force and he was gone, and that first Christmas when he was in Colorado and we were down here, and it just ripped my heart to shreds. It really did. And so that next year when he came back, he was able to come back home for the holidays. It was like, he was born all over again. I don't know. You decorate a little more, you bake a little more, you cook a little more. It's just that kind of shift in the atmosphere for sure.
Oh yeah, make sure you got all the favorites, all
Oh
those
yeah.
favorite dishes.
Yep. I sent him like this little tiny Christmas tree because he didn't have a Christmas tree, and I made him put it up because he probably wouldn't have if I didn't. It would probably stayed in the box, but yeah.
So what do you think though, and from your perspective, like what's your biggest pet peeve with the military? What do you dislike the most about it?
I think they treat our soldiers horribly. Um,
You mean like the chain of command does, the military from the as a structure, or people at home, or
veterans.
or what do you,
I
all of
think
it, all the above?
I think it's a combination of all of those things. It almost makes me, I don't know. The word that comes to mind is disposable. Because
just a number.
yeah, I sometimes feel like, the lifers they're gonna, the higher ranking are just like, well, this is what you got to do, suck it up, and maybe don't take outside circumstances into consideration when they're making decisions. And I understand that they have to do what they have to do, but I hate the way that our veterans are treated. I think the VA medical care system is the worst. I don't feel like it's funded well enough. I certainly don't think that um, the mental health aspect is funded well enough.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
really makes a person think that, they take so long to care, and it's just so like whatever that they're just kind of hoping people drop off on the way to their care, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Like,
yeah,
sorry, we couldn't get you. Oh, you made it through? All right, here you go.
yeah. I mean, there
Yeah.
shouldn't be that much. I don't understand it. There's not that much red tape in the private sector. Why is there that much red tape, and you have to jump through those many hoops in the VA medical system? It's ridiculous. It's and there's so many people that slip through the cracks because of what you just described. They don't want to have to go through all of that. They don't want to have to sit on a waiting list for a hernia surgery for 3 months. I mean, that's crazy.
It almost seems like instead of them doing something for the soldiers, they perceive it as soldiers trying to take something from them.
Right.
That's how I've always felt going into a VA or dealing with those doctors. Like it's almost like I have to take it from them, and that's how they perceive it.
Right. They're going to make you work for it, which is,
Yeah,
really, really
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
yeah, and the gaslighting is insane. You're like, why are you here? I have this blah blah blah. I'd be like, everybody has that. It's called being old. I'm
Right.
like, well, hold on, bud. Everyone might
Yeah.
have that, but I did this and blah 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 and this in the military, and I'm pretty sure it didn't start until I was getting out of the military. Okay, that's the connection, not age. Yes, I'm sure the age adds on to the pain. Everybody's got joint pain, but it's just insane. They don't recognize, like, some of us had to put a beating on our bodies. It's not the age, it's the mileage. Sometimes some of us took a
Right.
lot more mileage than the others. It's
Yeah.
nuts
it's
how they-
crazy. A prime example would be Joe Rogan did an episode a while back with a sniper. He was a Navy SEAL sniper. And this guy comes on and talks about his experience with the VA. And he was very vague and was like, "Oh, I've had some combat experience." And he said they just kind of blew him off and were like, "Yeah, sure you have."
Mhm.
And it turns out this guy had hundreds of sniper kills. He's one of the most decorated snipers ever. And he was just like, "Well, that's weird. They kind of blew it off like that. Like I haven't seen combat." So he ended up bringing in his DD 214. And he said their entire demeanor changed. They started treating him better, started getting him the help he needed, but he had to actually prove what he had done and seen. And that to me is just wild. That it just proves that when you walk in, they're just like, "Oh, here's another guy trying to get his benefits."
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's the thing that drives me nuts about it is it changed my perspective. Every veteran is could have up to 100% of their benefits, because that's what Congress sets aside for them every year. And so when you don't claim something that you got hurt for from the military, that money just goes away. And I think, if you sacrificed your life and your families had to go through that sacrifice, then you better believe that they owe you something. That's just my opinion on it.
No, I
They
agree.
at the very least owe you decent health care.
Yeah. And I will say, just because I got out 2015, and after 2016, and we all know what happened in 2016, a Veterans Choice Act got passed, and VA healthcare got a lot better. I was able to use, Veterans Choice Program, which is what you just go to your primary care at the VA and say, "Hey, I'd like to go see a civilian doctor for this and this and this." And it got, and then another reform happened where I was like, "Hey, I got a lot of back pain. I'm looking for, non-evasive care. I heard that possibly the VA will help you get like chiropractic care, or what's the thing when you stick needles in your back?"
Oh
Acupuncture.
yeah, acupuncture.
And they're like, "Oh yeah, we can get you that." And it just makes me realize that, one, there's people out there fighting for veterans at the higher levels, and there's laws getting passed, but the communication is getting lost between new options available to the veterans,
Right.
and what's going on. So like, if I didn't ask the questions to find out, I didn't know. And so that means probably a bunch of other veterans have no idea what's available to them. So
Right.
No, especially the older veterans, the ones that have been out for 15, 20 years, they have no clue what's going on.
And they're probably the ones that need it the most, right?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, the communication from the people that are making those decisions and passing those things is really awful. It's awful.
So you think
Now,
maybe the one of the biggest things the VA should change is just improve their overall communication and healthcare for all veterans. That's probably like start there.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
It makes you wonder because like people have their budgets, right? I remember there was always like, hey, we have to expend all of this, blah blah blah, because if we show we didn't use our full budget, then we don't get our full budget back.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes you wonder if they don't want to use certain budgets all the way up. Like maybe veterans come in, they use certain veterans choice programs. Well, if they don't use that whole budget, that means they can move that money over to some other pot. Yeah. So it's oof.
Yeah.
Now for the real controversial question. What's the best dish on Thanksgiving?
Oh, the best dish on Thanksgiving? Oh boy. Pie.
Which kind?
I like pumpkin pie. My husband loves
Yeah.
any kind of fruit pie, like apple pie, cherry pie. But you put a pumpkin pie in front of my son and my nephew, and they will finish the whole thing. Yeah.
That's how I am. Pumpkin pie is the best, and I gotta say, mashed potatoes and gravy is second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Oh
That's
yeah.
pretty good stuff.
Did you have to eat in any chow halls, Angela? Did you have to experience any military food?
I did because when so funny because when I was younger, like my dad would bring home C rations, which were so different than MREs. Like they have the crackers in the can and everything was, it's just different.
I didn't know they had different rations than us.
Oh, yeah. MREs is a new thing.
Yeah, I guess so, huh?
Yeah, they used to be called C rations or C-rats or whatever. And yeah, the crackers would come in a can and it was like potted meat. So my sister and I would sit on the floor in the living room and eat C rations. That was like a big deal. I wouldn't touch this shit now.
I wonder if they didn't they used to put Lucky Strikes in the MREs?
They may have, like way back when. Like
Cigarette, right? Yeah.
Yeah, cigarettes. I thought that was like World War II era.
Oh, it may have been.
Maybe up to Vietnam, but that was, of course, like they'd have like doctors and magazines that were like legit, like smoke a Camel.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
That's
We go back to those VA benefits. Somebody needed some
Yeah.
some sort of funding.
My dad was
That's
a heavy
okay.
smoker, and I guess maybe that's what his only vice that he brought back from Vietnam with. He was a heavy smoker for a long, long time. But when I was in Germany and going to high school, I was actually the manager of our wrestling team, and I didn't play any sports, but I was the manager of the wrestling team, and I was in band. And when we would have wrestling matches, obviously, tournaments and things like that, you travel all over the country. And so whenever we would travel to a different area for a tournament, it would be on base. And so we would have lunch or whatever in the chow halls. And I worked.
Which is always a good experience.
I mean, maybe if you want a colon cleanse, but
I'll tell you the best chow I had in my whole military stint. I may have said this on an episode. I always forget if I've told it or not. Was on my first deployment. We had this Afghan guy that we assigned to our DFAC. I don't even know how he got the job. He just ended up on our COP. And all he knew how to make, like one of his main dishes was poutine, where he would just take cheese, deep fry it, and put gravy over French fries. And I just ate plates and plates of poutine for almost 9 months.
that sounds like, yeah, I don't know that I could do that much cheese.
Dude, it was delicious. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
But you're burning so many calories over on deployment that it probably was a hearty meal.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, it was so good.
And on Buckley Air Force Base, where Freddie was stationed, didn't have a dining hall.
No,
Oh, mm-mm. No, I was
Really?
all excited. I was like, I heard Air Force food was really good.
that's interesting. I wonder if they got an extra allowance to eat out.
They did.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
They did. Yeah.
I would
Huh.
almost prefer that.
Yeah. I think, yeah, Freddie didn't really have to. I mean, obviously at basic training and then his tech school. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that was the nice thing about it is, your rent and your food was usually taken care of.
mhm.
Yeah.
You could blow as a private, you could blow all your money and be like, well, I got to eat chow for the next 9 days till payday. The first and the
Yeah.
15th hits.
Well, and then you always got washers and dryers at the end of the hall. I mean,
Yeah.
everything was pretty well taken care of. The paychecks weren't great, but the benefits were nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you didn't have, yeah.
The barracks situation for the different, or at least for the Army versus the Air Force, were very different. So in Germany, that was the only time that no, in El Paso, the barracks are very much like, big room, lots of beds, and then the restrooms and everything, showers are all down the hall, and laundry is at the laundromat. Um, Freddie's was more like a college dorm. So it had bedrooms and then a common area, and a very like a small little kitchenette. He had two people in his room, two people in the other room, and then like a little common area. So it looked very much like a college dorm.
Yeah. That's kind of how
Ours,
ours were. Ours were still, they were in the process at Fort Polk rebuilding the different barracks. And of course, the infantry guys, we were the last in line to get the new barracks. So I was in an old school building 1344 style barracks, Charlie Stack for most of my time when I wasn't on deployment, and it was like I'm pretty sure there's going to be like a class action lawsuit hit my Instagram feed and like, did you serve at Fort Polk? You may
yeah,
be
for
entitled
black mold.
black mold, asbestos, whatever you name it. A new bacteria was formed in that. Yeah, and it was
To be fair, I think that's why they didn't even want to reconstruct them. Was it was terrifying in there. It was like a bunch of savages hiding everywhere. There was asbestos crawling around. It was a very dangerous place to walk around.
and it was the cleaning thing. Like you could clean and clean, and they'd walk in there and be like, "Well, you can only polish a turd so much," you know.
That's what's funny about Fort Polk is I remember being a part of a lot of like room inspections in Fort Polk. They'd come in and be like, I mean, what can you do? Like it's like black mold on the ceiling. They're like, hey man, try and stay alive.
Well, the floor is mopped. That's good.
Yeah.
And then 2 months, 2 months, I was about to get out. They moved us all to the new barracks, and I got to enjoy the brand new barracks for 2 months. And I was like, wow, wow, fuck me.
Go
Like
run and
resort.
re-enlist.
Well, Angela, is there anything else like you would want to share while you have this time? Anything particular from your experience that you'd like to share?
No, it's funny because you're talking about like in room inspections and things like that. And as a child, I remember having to keep my room a very specific way. I was never grounded. I was always on restriction. It's one of those terms that, military brat will totally understand. And, all the civilian kids always got grounded and I was always put on restriction. But, it was an amazing experience. It just to be involved in that whole lifestyle and that whole, I don't know, it's just an honor for me. Just from being a child and watching the dedication and the blood, sweat, and tears that went into the soldiers as they prepared just to do whatever they needed to do in order to protect everybody. It's just amazing. It's a very humbling thing to be a part of. Um, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I have the utmost respect for everyone that serves and puts on the uniform and signs on that dotted line that says, "Yeah, I'll do that." Um,
Yeah,
and
and we respect all the moms and wives and children of the veterans as well. I'd like you to know that we do appreciate you being a part of the veteran family, and especially being a mom. Like I said, that's got to be brutal,
yeah,
and we really do appreciate it.
it's an honor. It really is. It's an honor, without a doubt.
Hopefully, you don't have to be a grandmother in the future of a military grandchild, but if it happens, you'll be the most prepared for it.
I will, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the odds may be kind of good considering that Stephen and I combined have 10 grandkids and we have 2 kids that haven't even had kids yet. So
You do have an extensive military background, that's for sure.
yeah, well, and it's not even, my husband's and my son and my dad's, it's my cousins, my uncles, my grandfathers, my little brother was in the Air Force. It's just, yeah, it runs deep in our family.
Uncle Sam's just watching Gillum's Family in the background.
Yeah, he's going to.
Well, I guess it's time to pop smoke, guys.
Yeah, y'all have a great weekend.
Yeah, y'all too.
Yeah.
Catch you later.